Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, worship team. What amazing worship this morning. We want to welcome in those who are watching right now. I know you've had great worship down at our classic service. We welcome you. Our Sioux campus, so good to have you tuning in. Those watching on Folks Listen TV, listening on the Promise FM, the Eagle 101.5, we welcome you. And of course, our internet campus, we welcome you as well. And we are so excited to have you as part of the family. Well, it's been a lot of fun this week. Everywhere I've driven, I've seen the BecauseILove.org signs. And if you haven't got yours yet, I think we got about 50 of them left is all. And there's some at the exit doors here, the exit doors in the middle entrance, a few downstairs at the office exit doors. Pick one up. Put it in your yard. It's been cool because we've also seen them in front of businesses. This week, I saw it in front of Flowers by Evelyn. I saw it in front of Alpine Chiropractic, Gobbler's Restaurant, Extreme Sports, the Promise FM. So it's not just individuals putting them out. So I hope you will take a sign if you haven't already put it out. That website is a website designed to simply invite people to check out E-Free Church, and they can do that through one of 5 entry points, and that's what we highlight in the website. Our services every weekend here at our Gaylor campus and our Sault Ste. Marie campus. Our online campus, that's happening right now. If you're watching online, welcome. I hope you'll join the conversation to the right of your screen. Hope you'll take time to fill out a Connect card as well. Let us know a little bit more about you. And then, of course, it also involves our Folks Listen TV ministry. It also, another entry point is our children's and youth ministries. And then another entry point we highlight is our Harvest Festival that would be held here at the Gaylor campus on Halloween. And that's always a wonderful night of engaging with the community. Now, what we want to do today, though, is we want to take another step in a challenge for October that we need all of you to participate in, because the effectiveness of these challenges really depend on participation. And so in your bulletin, there is a BecauseILove.org postcard. And if you didn't get one, grab a bulletin on your way out. There's extras, I know, down at the church office, whatever. Just ask, we'll get you one. Here's what I want you to do. We want to issue, using this card, the I Love My Church Selfie Challenge. Now, we did this a couple years ago, and we loved all the pictures. Let me just show you a few of the pictures that we saw when we did this before. We had moms and daughters, and moms and dads and daughters participating. Kevin McKinley out at Treetops. And we had a group that went to the Beach Bums game and had theirs with Sunburn, who loves our church. And then we also had individuals that just wanted to show half of a face. We also had, the next slide, bike riders that took time to stop and say, we love our church, and post it. Next slide, we saw veterinarians that got into the mix. The one on the right's the veterinarian. The next one, we saw singles by themselves in the picture, I should say, and then families taking pictures together. We saw people that stopped kayaking to take pictures together. On the next slide, our baristas down from our cafe took time out to do their picture with their card. I like this one because I don't know if you can read it, but on the right side of the screen, a couple ladies did a card and they said, I love sitting in the balcony. And now I'm always digging on the balcony, right? But I got to tell you the story, because last Sunday after second service, a man comes up to me and he brought his mom to church last Sunday. They sat in the balcony. And here's what he said. He introduces her to me and says, when you got done preaching, while they were passing out the communion elements, I led my mom to Jesus up in the balcony. How cool is that? God even works in the balcony. You know what I'm saying? How cool is that? Look at the next picture here. That middle one's kind of cool. It's a little dark, but that was one of our radio listeners. And they emailed and said, can I get one of the cards? We mailed it to them, and they took a picture showing it in front of their car radio dial. If you go to the next slide, some people even turned it into cookies, a more edible card, which is nice. Again, we saw people just of all ages. The next slide, people just saying, I love my church. Keep going. There's another great one. And then there's a couple more. And then look at this one. Look at this. This is one I love. Ken Borton and his wife, they actually took their car to Washington, D.C. He wanted to up everybody else. You know what I'm saying? And they took their picture in front of the White House. How about that? That's cool. So here's what we want you to do. This week, we need all of you to take a selfie with the BecauseILove.org card. Now, you could take it by yourself, as a couple, as a family, as a group, with a friend. You could be as creative or as bland as you want to be. That's okay, as long as you participate. And then what we want you to do is to take that selfie, post it on all your social media, but don't stop there. This is important. And what we want you to do is when you post it, share a reason why you love your church. Share a reason why you love your church, and then post it. We'll get this website out to even more people. So I hope that all of you will take advantage of this. If you don't get a card, get one before you leave. Get a sign. Be part of all that. By the way, if you're new or somewhat new to our church, can I encourage you to sign up for the This Is Us event coming up? It's a 3-week event. 3 different Sundays. It begins October 28th with a pulled pork lunch with my wife and I. It's going to be a casual time to get to know each other better. So I hope you'll sign up for that in the Connect area after church. And then please be praying and continue to be praying about our in-gathering project that we announced last week. And our project this year for November 18th's in-gathering offering is our desire to be able to upgrade all the stage lighting, which will so enhance our broadcast to the chapel, our broadcast to the Sioux, our broadcast on our internet campus, and our broadcast through TV. We want to enhance those lights here and at our Sioux campus, plus cover the entire Upper Peninsula with TV for up to 3 years. If we raise $82,000 in our in-gathering project this year, we could do all the lighting at both campuses and cover the UP with TV for 1 full year. If we raise $99,000, we could do all the lighting and cover the UP for 2 full years. If we raise $116,000, and we've done that before, I think the highest we've raised is $120,000. If we were to raise $116,000, we could do all the lighting and cover the UP for 3 full years. And just saying, if we were to raise $150,000, we've never done that, but God could make it happen, right? We could do all the lighting and cover the UP with TV for 5 full years. It's an amazing opportunity to reach over 300,000 people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We just continue to be so amazed at how God is using that TV ministry. I got an email this morning from Tracy, who watched this morning. We are re-airing the Rethink Parenting series right now on TV. She said, Pastor Scott, your sermon today on TV really opened mine and my husband's eyes. We've been struggling with our son. I really think your words are going to help us in a huge way. Kim, she emailed this morning and said, I caught the last 30 minutes of your show this morning. I'm a first-time watcher. Wow, every single thing you shared spoke to me. I look so forward to watching you more. Yesterday, I got called out about 11:30 in the morning to Traverse City, where there's an elderly couple who have watched our TV broadcast for 2 years. They can't leave their home, obviously. They can't get around. And she had gotten very ill. She was on a ventilator, and it was time to remove her from the ventilator. And the husband had his family call me because I'm the only pastor they have through TV. And I was able to go out to Traverse City yesterday, just a bittersweet opportunity to talk with Elvin and some of his family and to read scripture around Sue's bed and to pray with the family as they have their final moments with her. Those are all contacts we're able to make and ministry we're able to have because of your faithful giving. It's your giving that allows us to do TV and radio and internet campus. And on behalf of Elvin and Sue and Tracy and Kim and so many others, I want to say thank you to you. After last Sunday, we already had an internet campus viewer who lives in the UP who heard me announce that. He already sent in his gift because he's so excited about folks, listen, coming to the UP. I got an email this morning from Ray. Ray lives in Ontario, Canada, but he vacations often in the UP. And he's been to our Sioux campus before. He watches online right now, and he's giving a gift because he wants to see TV go to the UP. So we're excited about all that God's doing and ask you to continue to be praying about that. Well, today, we want to continue our series, Because I Love My Church. And we're looking at 8 steps we can take and should take because we believe the local church is the hope of the world. And we're the hope of the world because God has given to us, the church, the only message that can change someone's eternity. And last Sunday, we looked at the topic, Because I Love My Church, I Will Share Courageously. And today, we want to move forward with a second topic, and that topic is this: Because I love my church, I will give generously. And I want to talk about becoming a generous person. You know, when you think about money and stuff, every single person in this room at our Sioux campus, in the classic service, every single person listening on radio and TV and the internet, we all lean to one of 2 directions, every one of us. We either, when it comes to our money and stuff, lean towards being selfish, or we lean towards being generous. There's no middle road. We either lean towards being jealous with our stuff, or we lean towards being generous. Selfishness says, I want to keep as much of my stuff as possible for me. That's selfishness. Generosity says, I want to give and use my stuff as much as possible for the kingdom of God, trusting that God will meet my needs. Those are the 2 extremes, and we tend to lean toward one or the other. Now, which one would you imagine the Bible teaches us to move towards? Well, obviously, the Bible doesn't teach us to move towards selfishness. The Bible teaches us to move towards generosity. Selfishness is an indicator of spiritual stagnation. Generosity is an indicator of spiritual growth. So I want us to take our Bibles and turn to 1 Chronicles. 1 Chronicles. By the way, if you downloaded the new church app, and if you haven't, you need to. It just rolled out this week. It's awesome. You can just pull up all that stuff right now with the touch of a button. So I hope you'll do that. But in 2 Chronicles, we're going to look now at King David. Because this is King David's last hurrah. He's old now. He's going to address the people one more time. And as he does, his address to the people is going to be a challenge for them to be generous. Now, remember that King David, towards the end of his life, had a strong desire to build a temple for God. Back in the Old Testament, before there was a temple, you might remember there was a tabernacle. It was just a tent, a moving tent. And that was the location of the symbolic presence of God. Now, we know that God is present everywhere. But to remind Israel of God's presence, there was the tabernacle, this tent that went with them wherever they went. And David, in the later years of his life, is going, this doesn't make sense. I live in a home made of cedars. God's presence is in a tent. And David had a desire to build a temple for God, and God was good with that. But God said to David, you can't build it because you are a man of war. There's blood on your hands. So instead, I'm going to have your son Solomon build the temple. And in 2 Chronicles, I actually think that's wrong. I think it's 1 Chronicles. I think it says second. That's an error. It's thank you. Wow. Magic. Look at that. Woo. How about that? So anything I say wrong, you can correct? How about that? That's awesome. All right. Now, don't give that to my wife, okay? Now, 1 Chronicles 28, he's talking to Solomon, his son. Look at what he says. He says, as for you, my son Solomon, know the God of your father. Serve him with a whole heart. Man, what a great message from a father to a son. Serve him with a willing mind, for the Lord searches all hearts He understands every intent of your thoughts. I love this phrase. If you seek him, he will let you find him. I love that. But if you forsake him, he will reject you. Consider now, for the Lord has chosen you to build a house for the sanctuary. Be courageous and act. So now David says to Solomon, this is a big task, Solomon, but it's for God. So I want you to put all you have into it. And I'm going to help you. And here's how David helps him. He now, in chapter 29, at the beginning of chapter 29, he now is going to speak to the people and say, listen, Solomon has a big job. We all need to help. And he's going to give them a plea for generosity. Look at chapter 29, verse 1. Then King David said to the entire assembly, my son Solomon, whom alone God has chosen, is still young and inexperienced. And the work is great, for the temple is not for man, but for the Lord God. So he says to the people, listen, there's a great work we're going to do for God. Solomon can't do it by himself. We all need to be involved. And so he talks about the construction of the temple. And this is what he's saying. He's saying to the people, as we look at that structure of stewardship in the construction of the temple is, I need you to understand Solomon needs your help. And we all are going to have to be generous to see it happen. Now, I love what David does next. David leads by example. So David now says to the people, let me share with you the part I have done. We all need to be in part. We all need to be involved. We all need to be generous, he's saying. But let me start by sharing with you what I've done, because I would never ask you to do something, David says, that I'm not willing to do myself. And I love this about David. I love that David's transparent as a leader. I love that he's vulnerable. Because I'm sure there were people in Israel going, oh, David's just tooting his own horn. Because people will always judge motives incorrectly. But that's not what David is doing. David is simply saying, let me show you leadership by example, because I believe that's what God can use to spur you on to steps of faithfulness. So in this wording that David gives to Israel, what I see are four aspects of his giving, four aspects of his generosity. And I want to point those out this morning. We're not going to get any further than those four, so the whole backside of your notes we're not going to do this morning. But we're going to look at these four. When David talked about his giving, I see four things. Number one, how did David move from selfishness to generosity? Number one, his giving involved the right effort. It involved the right effort. And he says in this passage, I didn't just give. Listen, I gave with my ability. I gave my best effort. Look what it says in verse number 2. David says to the people, now with all my ability, key phrase, I provided for the house of my God. The gold for the things need made of gold, the silver for the things needed made of silver, the bronze for the things need made of bronze, and so on. So the first thing we learn about David is he was generous because he gave with the right effort. You know what most of us do? Let's just be honest. What do most of us do when it comes to giving? When it comes to our stuff? When it comes to our money? Because to be honest with you, probably most people lean towards selfishness. And why? Because here's our thinking. What's the least I can give and be okay? That's our thinking, isn't it? What's the least I can give and God's still happy with me? That's how most American Christians view giving. And that's why so many American Christians lean towards selfishness rather than towards generosity. David didn't have that mindset. David gave with all his ability. His mindset was not, what's the least I can give and still be considered okay. His mindset was, what's the most I can give and still trust God to take care of me? David had the right effort. Notice number 2. David had the right heart. And this is critical. You will never have the right effort when it comes to generosity until you first develop the right heart. Heart comes first. And so David says that he didn't just give with his ability, but he gave with delight. Look at it as we read this verse. It says in verse number 3 these words. Can we go to the next slide, verse 3? Here we go. He says, moreover, in my delight in the house of my God, the treasure I have of gold and silver I give. So he has the right heart. He gives with delight. I find this amazing. And I've shared this with you before a couple years ago. But when I talk about my story when it comes to selfishness versus generosity, it started very much on the selfish side. Now you have to understand that I've always given. I've always tithed. I grew up in a home where my mom and dad taught me the biblical principle of tithing. Tithe means 10%. And ever since I was old enough to understand money, I understood that 10% of everything I get goes to God. So when I was a kid and I got 50 cents, I had to put a nickel in the offering plate. When I got $1, I had to put a dime in the offering plate. And as I became an adult and married and started a family and began my ministry as a pastor, listen, I still every week gave my tithe. Every week. Didn't miss. But I hated it. I hated it. I viewed tithing like a God tax. Have you ever viewed it that way? To me, it was like a God tax. Got to pay my tax to God, just like you pay your tax to the government. How many of you really get delight in paying taxes to Washington? I mean, we don't, do we? We don't get delight in doing that. In fact, if you're like me, when it comes to tax time, I will never be dishonest, but I will take every loophole I can find so I pay the least amount of taxes. Because I get no joy out of paying taxes. None. And that's how it was with giving. I gave just like I paid taxes because I had to. It was a God tax. But over the last 20 years, one of the biggest areas of my life that God has changed is in the area of moving from selfishness to generosity. And you know how he did it? He did it by changing my heart. And I finally got to the place where I realized two things. First thing I realized was this: it's not mine to begin with. Man, when that light bulb went off, suddenly it was no longer a God tax. When I realized that everything I had really came from God, everything I am and everything I have really belongs to God, and my job is to be a good steward, to use it to His honor and His glory, when that light bulb went off in my head and my heart, suddenly I no longer viewed tithing as a tax. Now I viewed it as worship. And suddenly things changed. You know what else changed in my heart? And it's really been the last 10 years that this has happened. I have become less and less and less enamored with stuff. I don't know if it's because I'm getting old or what, but suddenly stuff just really doesn't do anything to me. If I had to make my list of things I wanted, it would be a very short list because there's not a whole lot out there I really want. I have a hard time today buying a shirt that's on sale that I really like because I got 50 shirts already in my closet. Stuff I drive an old beat up Ford Focus. It's ugly. It's rusting out. It shakes while you drive it. You know why I drive it? I could go out and get a different car, but you know why I drive the Ford Focus? There's two things about my Ford Focus I love. Number one is this: it's paid for. I love that. And number two, every time I turn the key, it starts. And I'm like, I don't need another car. I know it doesn't look good. And I know some might be embarrassed, and if you ever were in it and see the mess that I keep in it, you'd really be embarrassed. But anyway, the bottom line is I've become less enamored with stuff. You know why? Because God's done a work in my heart. Folks, listen. This is important. The change you need to move from selfishness to generosity is not a change of income, it's a change of heart. See, some people have this mistaken notion, if I just had more money, I would give more money. You know what the Bible says? If you're not faithful in the little things you have, you'll never be faithful in the big things. And the change you need to happen to move from selfishness to generosity isn't a change of income. It's a change of heart. David had the right effort when he gave. David gave with the right heart. Notice number 3. David gave with the right commitment. The right commitment. He didn't just give, he gave with delight. By the way, the Bible says God loves a cheerful giver. For the first 30 years of my life, I was not a cheerful giver. The word cheerful means hilarious, literally. That's what it means. God loves a hilarious giver. That doesn't mean the amount you give is hilarious. It means your attitude is hilarious, right? That wasn't me. David gave with the right effort. David gave with the right heart. Now he gives the right commitment because he says he now gives over and above. Look at the verse. Let's read it as we keep reading in verse number 3. Notice what it says. Moreover, in my delight, the right heart, in the house of my God, the treasure I have of gold and silver, I give. I give it to the house of God. How? Over and above. All that I already provided. He's already given about. What has he already given? He says, listen, I already gave 3,000 talents of gold. By the way, 3,000 talents is the equivalent of 114 tons. David, I already gave 114 tons, but I'm going to give more. I already gave 7,000 talents of silver. 7,000 talents is the equivalent of 260 tons. I already gave 260 tons of silver, but now I'm going to give even more. Because David was moving from selfishness to generosity. Here's what I've discovered in the last 20 years. The last 20 years, I've discovered that in order to move from selfishness to generosity, not only do I need a change of heart, but secondly, I need to be intentional. Now follow me. Because if you just say you're going to do it, you probably won't. You need to be intentional. How will you take steps away from selfishness toward generosity? Can I share with you 6 intentional steps that I've taken? Now, I share this with caution because just like I'm sure it happened with David, I'm sure some of you are going to just say, oh, he's just tooting his horn, and that's not the case. I just want to give you examples that God has done in my life. I'm not saying you should do all these things, not saying that at all. You got to say, God, what intentional steps do you want me to take? But I have found 6 in the last 20 years that have helped me to move from selfishness to generosity. Here they are real quick. Number 1 is tithing. I already talked about that. I still believe in tithing. And every single paycheck, the first 10% always goes to the local church. In fact, I have it set up for just automatic reoccurring. I don't even have to write the check. And so the first way that I take an intentional step toward generosity is tithing. Number 2, I call it missions. Over and above my 10% tithe, there are 4 ministries. 3 of them are individuals that we know. One of them is the Promise FM next door. There are 4 Christian ministries that we give to every month over and above our tithe because we believe in those ministries. And God has put it on our heart to be part of those ministries. So number 1, tithing is involved. Number 2, missions is involved. Number 3, we started this a few years ago. We just call it giving. And here's what I mean. We started a few years back putting into our budget what we called giving. It's a certain amount every paycheck, and every year we try to up it. A certain amount every paycheck that we set aside over and above tithing, over and above missions, that we just label giving. And then anytime through the year that God shows us a need or God puts something on our heart, we're prepared to be able to give. That's how we'll do our Operation Christmas Child boxes this month. We'll use that money to do that. So we have tithing, we have missions, we have giving. There's a fourth one, because I don't want my generosity to just be church. I want it to be a lifestyle. I want it to be beyond church. I want to be a generous person even outside of the church. So number 4, we practice what we call generous tipping. That's what we practice. Now, you have to understand that my wife and I now are empty nesters. We don't have kids in the house anymore. And so one of the things we really enjoy doing is eating out. I guess eating out and Tim Hortons coffee are my 2 vices, okay? And so we eat out. But when we eat out, we practice what we call generous tipping. Now, to me, generous tipping simply means this. It's always going to be above 20%. Sometimes a lot more, sometimes just a little bit more, but it's always above 20%. Now, I know that some of you are going, well, wait a second, they have to earn that. I remember my wife and I, at one of our previous churches, going out to dinner with a couple, and I kid you not, this was so embarrassing. The guy, when the server came over to get our drink order, here's what he did. He said, now, before you do anything, let's set some ground rules. I'd like you to tell me what percentage tip you're going to try to earn, and I'll tell you what you have to do to earn it. So we're all on the same playing field. And we're like, I can't believe he's doing this, you know? And we don't buy into that. And here's why. I really do believe there are times that we have really, really bad service. That happens at times. But you know what I've discovered? I haven't met a server yet who's rolling in the dough. I haven't. If someone's a server, you know what that usually means? They might be a single mom. There might be someone just with another job trying to make ends meet, or maybe a college student. And so one of the things I've discovered is that in most cases, servers do a very, very good job because typically their tip is based on that, isn't it? And so when a server does a really lousy job for me, I doubt very seriously that's the norm for that server. You know what that tells me? That tells me I bet that server's having a really bad day. I bet that server has a real issue at home. I bet that server got into an argument with somebody before they came to work. And now I have an opportunity, especially if they've already seen Jesus in my life and my interactions with them, to be an encouragement to them. So we practice generous tipping. The next thing is this. Number 1 is tithing. Number 2 is missions. 3 is giving. 4 is tipping. Number 5, we practice what we call blessing. And here's what I mean by that. Whenever someone blesses us, I always look for an opportunity to use at least a portion of what I've been blessed with to bless someone else. I feel obligated. Whenever someone blesses me, I feel obligated to look for an opportunity to bless someone else with a portion of that. Can I give you an example? And again, I do it cautiously because I know some are going to misjudge the most and go, oh, he's just trying to get us to buy his meal. No, that's not it at all. Let me just give you an example, okay? So let's say Laura and I are out eating. And let's say that our meal with a generous tip was going to come to $50. Let's just round it off. It's going to be $50. And at the end of the meal, the server says to us, somebody paid your bill. Now, someone's just blessed us. Now, what I usually do at that point is to say to the server, did they take care of you? And undoubtedly, the server will say, yes, they took care of me. Very good. You know what that means? That means I expected to come into that restaurant and walk out with my wallet $50 lighter. But now I'm going to walk out and my wallet won't be lighter at all. So here's what I do. Before I leave the restaurant, even though the person who blessed me has already tipped that server, I will put a $20 bill on the table. Now that server probably just got the biggest tip they're going to get all month when you put that with the tip they already got. And you know what happens? I still end up with a $30 net gain, but I was able to bless someone else. Those are areas that we've discovered that God's led us in to be intentional. Tithing, missions, giving, tipping, blessing. The last one for us is called saving. And we've recently started this, where every year we're putting away a little bit of money so that someday, if any of our grandchildren decide to go to college, we might be able to help them a little bit. Now, if they don't go to college, we're going to take a really nice vacation. But anyway, if they do, we'll be able to help them a little bit. Those are all intentional ways that God has led us to take steps away from selfishness and take steps toward generosity. And what I've discovered is this: if we're not intentional, we'll never take the steps. So David gave with the right effort. David gave with the right heart. David gave with the right commitment. And number 4, David gave with the right challenge. David gave with the right, he gave and he communicated his giving to the people for this purpose, so that he could challenge the people to take steps away from selfishness and take steps towards generosity. Look what he says in verse number 5. Let me read that for you. Verse number 5, he says, moreover, of gold for the things of gold, silver for the things of silver, that is, for all the work done by the craftsmen. And he ends his final speech to the children of Israel with this question: who then is willing to consecrate himself this day to the Lord? He wanted his giving to be a challenge. He wanted to be an example in such a way that the people would say, we need to take those steps too. We need to consecrate ourselves to the Lord and realize that everything we have belongs to him. We need to have a change of heart. We need to be intentional about taking steps away from selfishness and taking steps toward generosity. And you know what happened? It's amazing. If you keep reading in the passage, and we don't have time to, you'll discover that the leaders accepted that challenge. And they became more generous. And then the people accepted the challenge. And they became more generous. And they gave willingly. And they gave sacrificially. Because through David's leadership, people were challenged to have a change of heart and to become more intentional about taking steps away from selfishness and moving towards generosity. You know what the result was? The result's amazing. Drop down to verse number 10. Let me read verses 10, 11, and 12. Notice the result. Because, friend, listen. This will happen every time. When God's people become more generous, worship becomes more genuine. Let me say it again. When God's people become more generous, worship becomes more genuine. You know why? Because you can't worship God when you're selfish. Selfishness will get involved in the way of worship all the time. That's why there's so much dissent in churches across America when it comes to worship. Because people view worship through their selfish preferences. Some of you, when you leave church, the first thing you'll talk about in the car is, here are the songs they sang I liked, here are the songs they sang I didn't like. Do you not see that as a red flag? Worship isn't about what song did you like. Can I just remind you, we weren't singing to you, right? Why are we so hung up on it's got to be the way I like it? Why? Because we're selfish. That's why. Selfishness will always get in the way of worship every single time. Worship isn't about you. Worship is about God. And the more I take steps away from selfishness and towards generosity, the more I am going to see God like I've never seen him before. That's what happened. Look what David now, when all this happens, and the leaders give and the people give it, and now David, look what he does. It says in verse 10, so David, as a result of the generosity of the people, he blessed the Lord. By the way, that's worship. You know what worship is? It's blessing the Lord. The word bless means to speak well of. That's worship. When we speak well of God. When we focus on God. Doesn't matter the style or the song. When we focus on God, we are worshiping. So David spoke well of the Lord in the sight of all the people. And David said, "Blessed are you, O Lord, God of Israel, our Father, forever and ever. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty. Indeed, everything that's in the heavens and the earth, yours is the dominion, O Lord, and you exalt yourself as head over all." Then in verse number 12, he finishes up by saying, "Both riches and honor come from you. You rule over all. In your hand is power and might, and it lies in your hand to make great and to strengthen everyone." I love how this works. When David and the leaders and the people moved from selfishness to generosity, it ended up sparking genuine worship. Because when God's people become generous, worship becomes genuine. So here's what I want you to think about this morning. What extreme do you lean towards? When it comes to your stuff, when it comes to your money, do you lean more towards selfishness? I want to try and keep as much as I can for myself. Or do you lean more towards generosity? I want to use what God's given me as much as possible for His honor and His glory, and trust that He'll meet my needs. Do you need this morning to ask God to change your heart? I needed that 20 years ago, and God did. This morning, are you willing to ask God this question? God, how do you want me to be intentional this week about taking a step away from selfishness toward generosity? When it comes to your regular weekly giving to the church, what step can you take intentionally to move away from selfishness toward generosity? When it comes to giving to the ingathering project, how can you be intentional about moving away from selfishness and towards generosity? And when it comes to your personal life, even outside the church, how can you be intentional about taking steps away from selfishness and toward generosity? Would you stand with me for prayer? And I hope you'll do the selfie challenge this week. If you're part of our online campus, all you have to do is fill out a Connect card, and on it, ask for the card. We'll mail it to you. Or email us at churchonline@myefree.org. Would you pray with me? Father, I thank you that you're a generous God. You're so generous, you gave your Son to die for our sins. And you have called us to be a generous people. And that's hard for people who live in the culture we live in. So God, I pray that you would change our heart. That the more we seek you, the more you'll move us from selfishness toward generosity. And I pray this all in Jesus' name.